There's a moment that almost every English learner knows very well. You're in the middle of a conversation. Someone asks you a question, and suddenly your mind goes blank. Not because you're stupid, not because you don't care, but because you honestly don't know the answer. And that moment feels heavy.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is not the lack of knowledge, it's the pressure. That silent voice in your head saying, I should know this. I'm going to sound dumb. They'll judge my English. And suddenly, instead of answering, you freeze.
And here's the truth most people never tell you. Not knowing is normal. Not knowing is human. Not knowing does not make you weak in English. What does create stress is not knowing how to say that you don't know.
Exactly. Native speakers say, I don't know all the time, but they don't say it with fear. They say it with calm, with confidence, with options.
And that's what today's episode is about. Not avoiding I don't know, not hiding it, not apologizing for it, but learning how to own it.
Because when you say, I don't know the right way, you don't stop the conversation. You actually keep it alive.
In this episode, we'll talk about why saying I don't know feels so uncomfortable, how silence makes it worse, how to stay confident when your brain goes empty, and how to respond without freezing or panicking, all through real conversations, real emotions, real situations.
And if you've ever stayed quiet in a meeting or nodded even though you didn't understand or avoided answering because you were afraid, this episode is for you.
Take a breath. You're not behind, you're learning. And today, we're going to make I don't know one of the strongest tools in your English. Let's start by being very honest with ourselves. Most of the fear around saying I don't know has nothing to do with English itself. It starts much earlier than that. For many of us, growing up, not knowing was treated like a failure. In school, if you didn't know the answer, you felt exposed. People looked at you. Teachers waited. Silence felt loud. That emotional memory doesn't disappear just because you're learning a new language.
That's so true. And when you add English on top of that, everything intensifies because now it's not just I don't know the answer, it becomes I don't know the answer in another language. And suddenly your identity feels involved. You're not just afraid of being wrong, you're afraid of sounding unprepared, unprofessional, less intelligent than you actually are. And that fear, it sneaks into your body. Your shoulders tense up, your breathing changes, your mind races.
Yes, and something very important happens in that moment. Instead of focusing on communication, your brain switches into self-protection mode. You stop listening. You stop thinking clearly. All your energy goes into how do I not look bad right now?
I remember a moment at work that explains this perfectly. I was in a meeting, listening in English, and someone suddenly asked me a technical question. Not a hard question, just something I genuinely hadn't worked on yet. But my brain didn't think logically, it panicked. I felt this pressure to respond immediately, as if silence meant incompetence. So instead of calmly saying, I don't know yet, I started talking, rambling, using vague words, trying to sound smart. And honestly, it made things worse.
That's such a common experience. And what's interesting is that the fear of silence is often stronger than the fear of being wrong. Silence feels dangerous. It feels like people are judging you, even when they're not. But here's the reality. Silence is normal in conversation, especially when someone asks a question. Native speakers pause, they think, they breathe. We just don't notice it because they're comfortable doing it.
Exactly. When you pause, it feels like an eternity, but for others, it's just a pause.
Another layer to this discomfort comes from comparison. You hear someone else speak fluently, they answer quickly, they sound confident, and you think, why can't I do that?
But what you don't see is how many times that person also says, I'm not sure. I don't know yet. Let me check. They're not avoiding uncertainty. They're comfortable inside it.
And that's a key difference. Confidence is not about knowing everything. Confidence is about being okay when you don't.
There's also a cultural factor here. In some cultures, admitting you don't know feels like losing status, like you're supposed to always have an answer. So when you're speaking English, that cultural pressure travels with you.
Yes, and that's important to acknowledge because sometimes the voice telling you don't say you don't know isn't your voice. It's something you learned.
And learning something means you can also unlearn it.
Let's pause for a second and reframe this. Saying I don't know can actually sound professional, honest, and confident, depending on how you say it.
Think about this. Who do you trust more? Someone who pretends to know everything or someone who's honest and clear about their limits?
Most people choose honesty because honesty builds trust. So if you've ever avoided answering, changed the subject, or stayed silent because you didn't know what to say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're just human in a second language.
And the good news is this. Not knowing doesn't have to stop the conversation. In fact, it can open a better one.
In the next block, we'll talk about what actually happens when you say, I don't know, calmly, how people usually react, and why your fear is often much bigger than reality.
So now that we've talked about why saying I don't know feels so uncomfortable, let's talk about something just as important. What actually happens in real life when you say it? Because most of the fear lives in our imagination.
Exactly. Our brain loves to create worst-case scenarios. It whispers things like, they'll think I'm not smart, they'll lose respect for me, they'll regret asking me. But when you slow down and observe real conversations, something very different usually happens. Most of the time, people don't react with judgment. They react with understanding, because not knowing is normal.
Let me share a moment that really changed my perspective. I was once on a team call with people from different countries. English was the shared language, but not everyone was a native speaker. Someone asked me a question about a deadline, and honestly, I didn't know yet. I felt that familiar pressure rising, that moment where your brain says, say something, anything, just don't stop. But instead of rushing, I paused, just one breath, and said calmly, I'm not sure yet. I need to confirm that.
And what happened?
Nothing dramatic at all. No awkward silence, no strange looks. The other person simply nodded and said, okay, let me know when you find out. And the conversation moved on.
That's such an important moment because it shows how often our fear predicts a reaction that never comes. In reality, people usually care about clarity, not perfection. They want to know, can I trust what you're saying? Are you being honest? And saying, I don't know, answers both questions.
Yes, and there's something else. When you say, I don't know clearly, you actually remove confusion. Instead of guessing, instead of vague answers, instead of half-truths, you create stability in the conversation.
And stability feels good for everyone. It reduces stress, it sets expectations, it tells the other person, I'm present, I'm engaged, I'm honest.
Another thing people often don't realize is this. Native speakers say, I don't know, all the time. They just don't dramatize it.
Yes, they say things like, I'm not sure, I don't have that info right now, I'll need to look into it. And nobody thinks less of them. But when you say it, your inner critic gets loud. It says, you should know this, you sound weak, you're failing. But that voice is lying.
And sometimes that voice comes from past experiences. Maybe someone laughed. Maybe someone corrected you harshly. Maybe you once felt embarrassed, so now your brain tries to protect you by freezing.
The problem is that protection often creates more tension. When you freeze, the conversation becomes heavier. People don't know what you're thinking.
Exactly. Silence without intention feels different from silence with confidence.
Let's talk about intentional silence for a moment. A short pause before saying, I don't know, can actually make you sound thoughtful. It shows you are considering the question.
Right. There's a huge difference between awkward silence, panic, then mumbling, and a calm pause, then a clear response.
And that calm response doesn't need to be long. Sometimes it's as simple as, I don't have that information yet. That's it.
What's interesting is that when you allow yourself to say, I don't know, you actually feel lighter afterward. Because you didn't lie, you didn't pretend, you stayed aligned with yourself.
And alignment builds confidence. Not immediately, not magically, but slowly, consistently.
I've noticed that the more comfortable I became saying, I don't know, the more people trusted me. They knew that when I did give an answer, it was reliable.
That's such a powerful shift because confidence is not about always speaking. Sometimes it's about choosing honesty over performance.
And this applies not just at work. It applies in social situations too. Someone asks you about a topic you don't follow, a movie you haven't seen, a place you've never visited. You're allowed to say, I don't know much about that.
And often that opens a door. The other person might explain, share a story, include you instead of judging you. So the real question becomes, what are you more afraid of, not knowing or being seen?
That's a deep one. And in the next block, we'll talk about how to say I don't know in ways that feel natural, confident, and emotionally safe. Different tones, different situations, different levels of formality.
Yes, we'll move from mindset to practical language. So here's the moment where things usually break down. You want to be honest, you know it's okay not to know. But when the moment arrives, your mouth still freezes, your mind goes blank, your body tenses up, and suddenly, I don't know feels unsafe.
Yes, and that's because most people think confidence comes from having answers. But in real conversations, confidence comes from how you hold the moment, not the information.
Exactly. So instead of focusing on what to say, let's focus on how to enter the moment. Because once your body relaxes, the words follow more easily.
Let's start with something simple but powerful, your pace. When you feel pressure, you rush, you speak faster, you breathe less, and your brain loses space to think.
It's like trying to park a car while pressing the gas pedal.
That's such a good image. So the first skill is this: slow down on purpose. Even 1 second helps.
And slowing down doesn't mean silence forever. It can be filled silence. For example, let me think for a moment. That's a good question. Those phrases are not weaknesses, they're bridges.
Yes, they connect the question to your answer. They give your brain a soft landing.
I used to think fillers made me sound unprepared, but then I realized something. Native speakers use them constantly. They're not rushing to impress, they're giving themselves space.
Exactly. And once you create that space, you can choose how to say I don't know, because there isn't just one way.
Right, there are levels. Different situations need different tones. Let's talk about a few.
Okay, first one, neutral and clear. This works in almost any situation. I'm not sure yet. I don't have that information right now. No emotion, no apology, just clarity.
And notice something important. You didn't say, I'm sorry, I don't know. You just stated a fact.
Yes, that's a huge shift because unnecessary apologies make not knowing feel like a mistake, but it's not.
Now, let's move to another tone, curious and open. This is great in conversations, meetings, and learning spaces.
I'm not sure. How does that usually work? I don't know much about that yet. Can you explain?
That version changes the energy completely. You're not stopping the conversation, you're continuing it.
And people love explaining things when they feel respected. You're inviting them in, not shutting down.
Now, here's one many learners forget: responsible confidence. This is powerful at work. Yes, this one sounds like, I don't have the answer yet, but I'll follow up, or I'll check and get back to you.
This does two things at once. First, it's honest. Second, it shows reliability. You're not avoiding responsibility, you're managing it.
And that builds trust. People remember that you followed up, not that you didn't know immediately.
Let me share a small story here. I once worked with someone who always answered immediately.
Even when he wasn't sure. Oh no, I know where this is going.
Yeah, at first he sounded confident, but over time his answers changed. Details didn't match, deadlines moved, and slowly people stopped trusting him.
That's such an important lesson, because pretending to know costs more than admitting you don't.
Exactly. Now let's talk about emotional situations. Friends, social settings, casual conversations.
This is where many people feel embarrassed. Someone asks, have you heard about this? Do you know this person? Do you understand what they meant?
And instead of answering honestly, you nod, smile, pretend.
But pretending creates distance. Honesty creates connection.
So in these moments, you can soften I don't know with warmth, like, I'm actually not sure, I missed that. or I don't know yet, but I'm curious.
That tone feels human, not defensive, not small, just real.
Another powerful tool here is rephrasing. If you don't understand something, you don't have to say, I don't know directly. You can say, so what you mean is, or are you saying that?
That's brilliant because it shows engagement, not confusion. Even if your understanding isn't perfect, you're participating.
And finally, let's talk about the hardest one. When you truly feel exposed, interviews, public speaking, being put on the spot.
Those moments activate fear instantly. Your chest tightens, your thoughts scatter.
In those moments, short and grounded is best. I don't have that detail right now, or that's not something I can answer at the moment.
Notice how calm those sound. No panic, no over-explaining.
Because confidence doesn't come from length, it comes from steadiness.
And the more you practice these versions, the less dramatic "I don't know" feels. It becomes just another sentence.
A useful one.
In the next block, we'll slow everything down and focus on key phrases you can borrow, not just definitions, but context, feeling, and real-life use.
Yes, phrases you can keep in your pocket for the next time your mind goes blank.
Before we jump into the phrases, let's take a moment, because this part isn't about memorizing sentences. It's about feeling safe when you don't have the words yet. These phrases are tools, not rules, not scripts, just gentle supports you can lean on when your mind freezes.
Exactly. Think of them like handrails on a staircase. You don't always need them, but when the moment feels shaky, they help you keep moving. So we'll go slowly, one phrase at a time, with meaning, context, examples, and small real-life moments.
Let's start with a simple one. I'm not sure yet. This phrase is incredibly powerful because it's neutral. It doesn't sound defensive, it doesn't sound insecure, it doesn't sound final. The word yet is doing a lot of work here. It suggests openness. It leaves the door unlocked. You're saying, I don't have the answer now, but this isn't the end. For example, at work, I'm not sure yet. I need to check with the team. Or socially, I'm not sure yet. I've never thought about it that way. I remember someone once asked me where I wanted to live long term, 10 years ago. I smiled and said, I'm not sure yet. And honestly, that answer was truer than anything else I could have said.
Next one is, I don't have that information right now. This one sounds calm, grounded, and professional. I don't have that information right now. Notice something important. There's no emotion here, just a fact. This phrase works especially well in meetings, calls, or interviews. It tells the other person, I'm not guessing. I respect accuracy. For example, I don't have that information right now, but I can get it for you. Or, I don't have that information right now, let me follow up. When I started using this phrase, I noticed people trusted me more because they knew when I did speak, I wasn't improvising.
Other one is, that's a good question. Let me think for a moment. This phrase is beautiful because it buys you time and shows respect. You're not freezing, you're pausing with intention. It tells the listener, I heard you, I'm taking this seriously. Examples, that's a good question, let me think for a moment. Or slightly softer, that's interesting, let me think. I use this when I feel pressure building in my chest. It gives my body a chance to relax before my brain starts working again.
Move on to, I'm not familiar with that. This one is honest and mature. I'm not familiar with that. You're not saying you're incapable, you're saying it's outside your experience. This phrase works well when someone mentions a tool, a trend, a reference, a cultural detail that you simply don't know. For example, I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain? Or, I'm not familiar with it yet, but it sounds interesting. I used to pretend I knew things just to avoid this sentence. Now I see it as an invitation, not a weakness.
Next is, I'll need to check and get back to you. This phrase communicates responsibility. You're not disappearing, you're committing. It works best when paired with action. I'll need to check and get back to you later today. I'll check and send you an update. This phrase is powerful because it shifts the focus from not knowing to what happens next. I once said this in a meeting and later followed up with a short message. That follow-up mattered more than the original question.
Another one is, I'm not completely sure, but I think. This phrase is perfect when you have partial knowledge. You're being transparent. You're not overclaiming. It protects you. If your answer isn't perfect, you already framed it honestly. For example, I'm not completely sure, but I think the deadline is next week. Or, I'm not completely sure, but I believe that's how it works. This phrase feels human. It sounds like thinking out loud, not performing.
Next is, can you clarify what you mean? This phrase is underrated. Sometimes you don't lack knowledge, you lack clarity. Asking for clarification is not ignorance, it's precision. Examples, can you clarify what you mean by that? Can you clarify the last part? I remember someone once asked me where I wanted to live long term, 10 years ago. I smiled and said, I'm not sure yet. And honestly, that answer was truer than anything else I could have said.
Next is, I don't want to give you the wrong information. This phrase reframes not knowing as care. You're saying, I respect you enough to be accurate. For example, I don't want to give you the wrong information. Let me double check. Or, I don't want to give you the wrong details. People usually appreciate this. It shows integrity.
I need a moment to gather my thoughts. This phrase is gentle and self-respecting. You're not rushing yourself. It's perfect when emotions are involved, or when the question feels big. I need a moment to gather my thoughts. That sentence gives your nervous system a permission to slow down, and clarity often follows.
Let's end with one that feels hopeful. I don't know yet, but I'm open to learning. This phrase turns uncertainty into growth. It shows humility and curiosity. Example, I don't know yet, but I'm open to learning more about it. That sentence has changed how I see myself as a learner. Not behind, just in progress.
None of these phrases are dramatic. That's the point. Confidence is quiet.
And not knowing is not the opposite of confidence. Pretending is. In the next part, we'll bring everything together and talk about how to carry this confidence forward into real conversations.
Before we end this episode, I want you to pause for just a second. Not to think about grammar, not to remember phrases, just to notice how you feel right now. Because if there's one thing this episode was about, it's not language, it's permission.
Permission to not know. Permission to pause. Permission to be human in a second language. We grow up believing that confidence means having answers. But real confidence often sounds like, I don't know yet.
And maybe today you realized something important, that the moments you fear the most, the pauses, the questions, the blank spaces, they're not proof that you're bad at English. They're proof that you're thinking.
Think about how children learn. They ask questions constantly. They hesitate. They repeat themselves. And yet, we never call them insecure. We call them learners.
Somewhere along the way, we forgot that learning doesn't stop just because we're adults, especially in a language that isn't ours.
If you take one thing from today, let it be this. You don't need to sound certain to be respected. You need to sound honest.
Next time your mind goes quiet in a conversation, try not to panic. Take a breath. Use one of the phrases you heard today. Or simply say nothing for a moment. Silence is not failure. Silence is thinking out loud without words.
And remember this. Most people are not judging your English. They're listening for meaning. They're listening for connection.
If this episode helped you feel a little lighter, a little calmer, a little less afraid of not knowing, that means it did its job.
In the next episode, we'll talk about something many learners fear even more than not knowing. Interruptions, pauses, and silence, and how to use them as tools, not weaknesses.
Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're not behind. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment down.